How is it going, everyone? And welcome to a brand new episode of Inside the Ravine. Joining me this week, as always, from beautiful Pasadena, is my co host, Josh Schaefer. Josh, we were actually able to get you out of the Ontario Reign offices, but the only way to do that is to make sure we record at the crack of dawn. So, good morning to you over there.
Good morning. Good morning. You can take a man out of the office, but you can't take the office out of the man.
Yes.
No, actually, I would much rather be recording from here. So I mean, I'm just glad that we could do this in the morning. I wish that there were better things to talk about, but here we are,
Yeah.
another episode of The Sky is Falling.
Yeah, it's been a while since the sky is falling, but we have our first in about a month or so. But before we get to all the awful things surrounding the Dodgers, make sure you guys listen to the show wherever you guys get your podcasts. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and the Odyssey app. Make sure to also follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all at Inside the Ravine. And you guys can also watch and subscribe over on YouTube. Find us over there at Inside the Ravine. And also, Josh, you also can leave a voicemail. If you're a Dodgers fan right now, you're frustrated with how the team's looked, how the bullpen's been managed, all of that kind of fun stuff. If you want to voice your opinions, just talk about the Dodgers, you guys can give our voicemail hotline a ring, 323-736-1815. In future episodes, we'll play your calls as part of the Q&A. So again, if you have a question or just want to babble and share your frustrations, that's the place to do it. But Josh, we're going to talk about a couple of things, but the first thing that I want to discuss is last night's game, and we don't have to go too in depth on it because not a whole lot to talk about. I guess the biggest thing first off is that Freddie Freeman finally hit the 300th home run of his career after sitting on it for a couple of games and coming up just short numerous times by hitting it to the warning track. So he finally gets that. So that's the high of yesterday's game. But the rest is a bunch of lows because I tweeted this out, Josh, but I don't think I've ever seen this in a Dodgers game, let alone a baseball game, is that a team takes an immediate 2-run lead, then proceeds to fall behind by 7 runs, then proceeds to come all the way back in just, I think, 2 innings to make it a 1-run game, and then proceeds to lose the game by 8 runs. So, yeah, Josh, yeah. I don't know what the hell that was.
Yeah, yesterday was a tough one. I mean, when you score 8 runs, you should not be losing a game. Of course, you can say the same thing for the Twins the other night, in that last game that we had talked about on the show, a 9-8 extra innings affair. But look, I mean, in this one, the Dodgers, you score 8 runs on the road, you lead 2-0 early in the game. You're thinking, if I was telling you about the game, you would think the Dodgers probably won by a lot. But when you find out they lost and gave up 16 runs in the process, I mean, that's something we haven't really it seems like we haven't really seen in a while. And the bullpen just couldn't get it done. Obviously, Julio didn't have his best stuff, and then the offense came back and picked him up, and then the bullpen let us down again. So, yeah, I mean, it was kind of just a back and forth game where you're coming back and you're not coming back, and the other team's scoring a bunch of runs. So definitely not a great game, and definitely not a good way to start off the series, especially. But the Dodgers. We talked about this. These next couple weeks, couple games here could be a gauntlet for them. So, not a great start, but definitely not a lot of positives to take away from a game where you give up 16 runs and the pitching is now got a huge question around it.
Yeah, I mean, in a 3-game series against the Twins, where we'll be talking about the bullpen next, but they needed Julio to eat as many innings as possible. And early on, it looked like he was going to do that through 2 scoreless innings, and then gets to the 3rd inning. Things just completely fall apart for him. Allows 4 home runs, I think 6 runs in total. Josh, here's a fun bar trivia. If you ever want to whip it out there on in Old Town Pasadena. But Julio became the first Dodger pitcher to allow 4 home runs in a single inning since good old Ben Wade in May of 1954. So,
Oh, Ben Wade. Yeah.
good old Ben Wade. So it'd been some time. So a historically bad inning for Julio. It's been a bad season for Julio. He's now allowed 14 home runs this season, which is tied for the most in all of baseball. I think last year he allowed, I want to say 20 for the entire season, and we're only 1/4 of the way through this season. His ERA is also 4.39 now. This is a very, very bad season for Julio, unlike something we've seen from him in recent memory, where this guy has been consistent. He's the guy that goes out there, gives you 6 innings, allows 2 or 3 runs, and that's what he gives you every start. But this year, he's given you some of those starts, but he's also had a number of starts now where he's just not had it. Things have just blown up for him. It doesn't sound like he was tipping his pitches last night at all. He was just throwing pitches down the heart of the plate, giving him juicy, juicy meatballs, and the Cardinals were capitalizing. But yeah, a month and a half, Julio has been the Dodgers, I guess you could say, the second worst starter, with only Noah Syndergaard being worse because Kershaw's been better. Dustin May, when he's been out there, has been better. And Tony Gonsolin and his 5 or 6 starts, he's been better. So Julio, he's been a weakness so far of the starting rotation.
Yeah, he has. And you know what? I mean, you look at the two starters that haven't, given us what we've expected, and it's Julio and it's Syndergaard. And for me, they're two players that are kind of getting beat in very different ways. Julio, I feel like, hasn't really been getting knocked around too much. He's just given up so many home runs this year, which is so out of character. And then somebody like Syndergaard just gets knocked around. I mean, teams will rally against Syndergaard. Base hit, base hit, base hit, double, double, all of a sudden a bunch of runs across the plate. Where Julio has been, I'll strike out the first 2 guys and then give up a bomb. And then, the next guy gets a base hit and the next guy hits a bomb. And it's like, all right, well, see, that's how they're doing their damage. But right now, neither one of them have been great. And I think that's been what's been most surprising about the pitching staff, or at least the rotation, because coming in, we both expected Syndergaard to have a bounce back year, especially working with Mark Breyer and kind of having that same impact that Andrew Heaney had and Tyler Anderson had, and other pitchers in the past have had when they come to the Dodgers. And it hasn't been that. And then Julio, especially after last year, it's been kind of weird to see because, in some sense, he's been really good and reliable. And then in another way, he's given up so many home runs, and it's been really surprising. So I think he'll figure it out. But last night certainly wasn't encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just taking a quick look at Julio's numbers, and his strikeout numbers, the exact same as last year, actually slightly better. His walk numbers, better than last year, exactly the way they were in 2021. And even his hits per 9 innings. I mean, last year was fantastic. He was only allowing 6.5 per 9 innings, but the year before, 7.3, 7.4. This year, 8.6. So he's essentially just allowing one more hit per 9 innings, which isn't awful, but you can find easily what the issue is. His home run rate per 9 innings. Going back to 2019, Josh, here's his home run rate per 9, 0.8, 0.8, 0.9. Last year was the worst of his career at 1.2. This year it's nearly doubled at 2.3. So yeah, that right there, that's the issue, the home runs. So if he can bring it down, I think he'll be just fine because, again, he's not walking guys. He's allowing just barely that many more hits. But yeah, hopefully Julio can turn it around because the Dodgers are desperately going to need him in the starting rotation for a reason we'll talk about later in the show. So
yeah, they definitely do. And like I said, I think he'll figure it out. But his last start certainly wasn't encouraging.
Yeah, you know what else isn't encouraging, Josh?
What?
Having your bullpen go, I think, about 26, 27 innings over a 4-game span. So we're going to transition to the bullpen now because, in the last episode, I think we were talking about how the bullpen had been so dominant over the last couple of weeks. Monday wasn't a great outing, but the next 2 games, a whole lot better for the bullpen. But this has been a 4-game stretch where the bullpen has had to eat innings. I think in the Twin series as a whole, they had to pitch 21 innings. Obviously, last night they had to go 5 after Julio was yanked early, and everyone, and I mean everyone, is just being worked. Just going back to Monday, Josh, Shelby Miller, 4 innings. Dylan Covey, 4 innings. Yancy Almonte, 2 innings. Victor Gonzalez, 2 innings. Evan Phillips, 2 innings. Phil Bickford, 4 innings. And then you got Andre Jackson with 3 innings, Justin Brule with 3 innings, Bruce Dark-Ratterall with almost 2 innings, and Caleb Ferguson with an inning. This is the last thing you want. You want all your guys fresh. You want your starters going deep into games, and the Dodgers haven't been able to do that, and they don't have an off day for about a week and a half. So I don't even know who's fresh at this point anymore. Yesterday in the game, Phil Bickford, his velocity was down a couple of ticks, so I'm not sure if he's fully recovered from, I think that was Monday night when he went full hero mode. So the bullpen, they have injuries, they have guys that are hurt, they have guys that are throwing every other day, and hopefully, again, at some point, a starter can go deep and preserve some arms because if for whatever reason today, Josh, we're only able to get 4 or 5 out of our starting pitcher, and you have to turn to the bullpen for 4 more innings. It's just at some point things might really hit the fan for the Dodgers at this rate.
Yeah, I mean, things definitely aren't looking great, and especially when you look at how deep some of the starters have gone in the last few games. I mean, you start with, of course, this game the other night against the Cardinals that we were talking about, and Julio did not go very deep at all. Only what the 3 innings, and then the game before, let's not even the game directly before the Dodgers, they win 7-3. The team the starting pitchers just haven't gone very deep. So, like, you get Dustin May, who goes 1 inning and leaves, and that's obviously a situation in itself. Kershaw goes 4 innings the other night, gives up 2 and gets chased. And then you go back to the Syndergaard game. Syndergaard lasts 4 innings as well. And that was a game when people were thinking, okay, Syndergaard's going to come in and needs to eat a lot of innings here. So you've got Syndergaard and Kershaw going 4, May goes 1, Julio goes 3. And that's just not enough. And I know that I don't want to harp on the starting pitching too much because starting pitching has actually been a bright spot for the team this year. It's part of the reason why the teams, by the teams, as a whole, the team ERA has been pretty good this year. I believe over the last 2 games, it's fallen out of the top 10 in baseball, but for pretty much all season, it's been in the top 10, if not even higher. The team's also top 3 in the league in strikeouts per 9 innings, top 3 in the league in walks per 9 innings, on the good side of walks, low. But these last couple of games certainly haven't helped when you're about to go through a really tough stretch of games, and you're not going to have an off day for quite some time. So when the starting pitching isn't, helping out the bullpen can't help out the starters.
There we go. I was muted for some reason. I was going fully in depth, and I don't know why I was muted. But yeah, the bullpen, they've been good all year. It's just the concern is you overwork them too much. Injuries, they could potentially happen because it seems like every pitcher on the Dodgers is battling something at this point right now. And the last thing you need is for some of these key guys in the Dodgers bullpen to potentially get hurt, because there's some guys that have been really solid so far this year, but they're guys you weren't necessarily expecting to be good. Obviously, Evan Phillips, he's been fantastic as per usual, but guys like Caleb Ferguson, Victor Gonzalez, those two names especially, they've been fantastic for the Dodgers, and they've been relying heavily on those two guys to be their, high leverage arms. So you want to make sure you preserve their health. You don't want to make sure anything happens to them. But one final thing on this bullpen, Josh, to talk about. If we thought Alex Vesia was making a case for the worst arm in the bullpen, I think Yency Almonte might be in the running now, because his horrible, disastrous season continues. He got lit up last night. He took over for Andre Jackson. And first off, I know a lot of people in last night's game were criticizing Dave for his moves late in the game, and I don't know what he was really supposed to do. Like, Andre Jackson came in, I think, through 3 scoreless innings, then allowed a couple guys to get on base, and Dave ultimately decided to pull him. So that I have no problem with. Maybe going to Yency Almonte, that was a little questionable, because on the season now, Josh, his ERA sits at exactly 9. His WAR is minus 0.4. And even the advanced numbers, they can't back him up. His FIP is 6.74. It just hasn't been a great season for Yency Almonte. His strikeout numbers are down from last year. His walks are triple what they were last year. 18 innings, I guess that's still kind of a small sample size, but I don't know. What do you do? Do you send him back down and hope he could turn things around like Alex Vesia has kind of been doing, or do you maybe just ride it out and just pray that he kind of recaptures what happened last year?
I mean, you look at his last 2 appearances, against the Twins on Monday and against the Cardinals on Wednesday. What day of the week is it? It's now Friday. So I guess against the Cardinals on Thursday. And 7 runs, all earned, 6 hits, 3 bombs, 2 walks and 1 strikeout in an inning and 2/3 over his last 2 games. That itself has felt like how this season has gone for Yency. So it's disappointing. I think we're getting close to send him down, let him figure it out, because right now it's not working. And the Dodgers need it to work, because the bullpen was a lifeline for the team last year. And when the team was starting to get hot and starting to get rolling and surging in the baseball power rankings, got to the best record in the NL. They had the long win streak. It was the bullpen that was keeping them in these games, and the offense was finally starting to click. Pretty much everything was clicking right there, and the bullpen was a huge part of it. And the Dodgers need these guys to get going because I've been saying all year, Yency Almonte is going to figure it out. Like we've seen how good he was last year. Like he's going to figure it out. Right now, he's just not there yet, and maybe the Dodgers have to do something to help him get there.
Yeah, and I looked up his peripheral rankings, and the advanced numbers, they don't back him up either. The only thing he's doing well this year is his hard hit percentage. I guess that's a positive. Guys are hitting the ball hard off of him, but everything else, ninth percentile expected batting average, 11th percentile expected slugging, 10th percentile in strikeout percentage, 21st percentile in walk percentage. He is just getting nothing. Guys aren't chasing. His fastball has no spin to it. So it's been bad for Yency. Again, maybe a trip to OKC would be good for him. I know Alex Vesia, I believe his first outing there, he got lit up. But I think ever since, he's actually been really good. So maybe they call up Vesia in exchange for Yency Almonte, and he can figure things out because they just really need him. Because at this point, like I mentioned, they're having to rely on Victor Gonzalez and Caleb Ferguson. At some point, you would think they might, regress just a little. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll continue to be solid. But the Dodgers desperately need Almonte if this bullpen's going to be solid. But we are going to take a quick break, Josh. When we come back, as if the bullpen didn't have enough issues, we're going to be talking about something that might be even worse in the starting rotation. All right, Josh, we're going to wrap things up by talking about the Dodgers starting rotation and what exactly they're going to do. On Wednesday, they played a day game against the Twins, very early first pitch about at noon. I'm in line at Splash Mountain, and I get a text from my cousin saying we are, toast. I forget how it was worded, but it was essentially like, oh no. And I'm thinking, what's going on? And my cousin goes, yeah, Dustin May is out of this game after one inning. And I'm going, what do you mean he's out after one inning? And she's like, I don't know. So I go to Twitter and everyone's, panicking that Dustin May's day is done. Apparently his velocity was down like 2 ticks and he exits the game after one inning. The official diagnosis for Dustin May was a flexor pronator strain. Now, Josh, we went to college. Can you explain to me what exactly that is?
Yes. So let me call a friend who is in athletic training, and then I'll talk about it.
There we go. So that doesn't sound good. I think the Dodgers, when they officially placed him on the IL, they said it was a forearm strain, I want to say. But according to reports, the hope is that Dustin May misses only 4 to 6 weeks, where you hear forearm strain, you hear this never before heard word and flexor pronator strain, and that doesn't sound enticing. That sounds like a potentially season-ending injury. So I guess there's some sort of hope that Dustin May can return slightly before the All-Star break, maybe right around the All-Star break. I guess that would be best case scenario. But Josh, we have to, strap in and realize there's a potential that things don't go 100%. Dustin May can miss more time, potentially the rest of the season. And if that's the case, this is a Dodgers starting rotation. We talked about it earlier in the episode. Julio's been struggling. Tony Gonsolin already missed a couple of months. And now you have Dustin May, who is a TBD. It could be a month and a half. It could be the rest of the year. What do the Dodgers do?
Yeah, well, I think they have pretty much one place to turn right now, and it's Gavin Stone. He has already been called up and made his debut. It wasn't great, but I think that's okay. I think second go around he'll be a little bit better. Obviously, I think that in this situation, people might be wondering, well, where in the world is Ryan Pepio? And Pepio is still out. Dave Roberts has said that he probably doesn't expect to see him until probably the All-Star break as well. So that's kind of the timetable for our guy Pepio. And then Bobby Miller's, Dave Roberts said Bobby Miller just isn't ready yet. So I think you turn to 2 guys. Right now, Michael Grove is with the team, but I don't know if that's the answer moving forward. And I don't know if Dave thinks so too either. So I think that the answer right now is probably Gavin Stone. And, he hasn't had a phenomenal year in the minors, but He's coming off a couple of good appearances, and I think that the Dodgers, you give him a second opportunity with the big club, give him a more expanded role, see what you can get from him, because I think the Dodgers need him to be good, and I think that that's the move that probably makes the most sense.
Yeah, Gavin Stone, I think I don't think they officially said like that's gonna be our guy, but that does make the most sense. His last outing in Oklahoma City, 5.2 innings, allowed 2 runs, but did strike out 10. And yeah, his numbers haven't been great so far this year in AAA, but if you go and you take out his very first start, in which he got absolutely lit up, he has posted a 2.73 ERA
Yeah.
over his last 7 starts, so that's actually pretty solid. Obviously, didn't look great when he made his debut, but you can't ask for a whole lot when a guy makes his debut. Because yeah, when you look at the other options, like you mentioned, Michael Grove, which I wrote an article yesterday, Josh, talking about potential options, and I was like, well, there's Michael Grove, but nobody's seen or heard from him in like a month and a half. And to be honest, I didn't even remember Michael Grove was placed on the IL. I thought he was just down in the minors, but apparently he got hurt at some point. And then, yeah, yesterday, Dave's like, oh, yeah, he's here. He's with us. He's on the taxi squad. But yeah, I don't think the Dodgers necessarily want to use him in the starting rotation. They called up
Yeah.
Andre Jackson yesterday. He 8 innings out of the bullpen. He's the guy that can give you length, but he hasn't been great this year. I don't think the Dodgers want to use him. The one that just sucks, though, is Ryan Pepio, because obviously we talked to him this offseason. He talked about how he was ready. He was ready to do whatever was asked for him. And we talked about how he'd probably have an everyday role on the 26-man roster, because if he wasn't in the starting rotation covering for like Tony Gonsolin to begin the year, whenever these guys would come back, he would probably shift to the bullpen and be like that Ross Stripling kind of role where if you need some guy to give you 2 or 3 innings out of the bullpen, he could give you that. He still has this oblique injury that, like you said, Dave pretty much ruled him out until the All-Star break, which just absolutely sucks because the dude literally made a start like 3 days before the season even began. And the injury itself sucks, but the fact that he probably would have been in the starting rotation from opening day until at least the All-Star break, because he would have taken Tony Gonsolin's role, then he would have taken Dustin May's role. So that does suck for Ryan Pepio. I mean, you got to really feel for the guy, but yeah, those are your realistic options at this point. And again, Bobby Miller, a lot of people are calling for Bobby Miller, but I think he's only made 4 starts in Oklahoma City this year. I think he made 4 starts in Oklahoma City last year. So you want a little more than 8 starts at the AAA level, and he also hasn't really been that great at the level. So Gavin Stone, come on down. You're the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And Pepio, the status on Pepio is that he's throwing, but he's not really throwing. He's just playing catch. And he probably won't be throwing off a mound for a little while either. So that's why they're thinking All-Star break due to that the soreness on his side and the oblique injury. Bobby Miller just hasn't been great in AAA. I think there's still a lot for him to improve on. He's got a +5 ERA in a couple of starts in Oklahoma City, so that's got to get a little bit better. And then, yeah, I mean, for Michael Grove, I suppose that could be an option. But I think right now the Dodgers, the reason they have him up is for the bullpen, because that's another issue that the team has, and you got to try to figure out, how to plug these holes right now. So I think Grove to the bullpen, Stone to the rotation is probably your best option. And then at this point, just stay healthy, because Gonsolin's been good, Kershaw's been good, but you can't afford another injury at this point. And those are two guys who have been a little bit injury prone in the past. Really going into the summer, the Dodgers can't afford, another bad break for the starting rotation, let alone the bullpen. But the Dodgers can't afford another injury, and if they do, I think that maybe forces somebody's hand a little bit in needing to go out and acquire another starting pitcher, especially if it appears as if Dustin May is going to be out for even longer.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to you don't want to assume worst case scenario, but again, Dustin May, there's a chance he misses the rest of the season. Tony Gonsolin is a very, very injury prone pitcher. We've already seen him miss a couple months this year, missed a couple months last year. Julio, usually he's good when it comes to health, but he's been struggling so far this season. You got Clayton Kershaw, who's by far been the best starter in the rotation, but at some point he's going to go down with probably another back injury. And if he's down for the count, I mean, things can just, take a turn for the worse, especially if you're not getting much production out of Gavin Stone. So for right now, Dodgers are kind of fine, but when you have to think big picture here, there are some concerns there. And like you said, Josh, if things don't really smooth itself out over the next couple of months, you might not be able to afford waiting until the trade deadline. You might have to start making calls in June and early July before the All-Star break and seeing if there are any starting pitchers available, because you want to make sure that by the time September and October roll around, you have, at the very least 3 guys that you 100% can rely on. You would like 4, and right now for the Dodgers, it seems like if the playoffs started next week, Kershaw might be the only guy where you know exactly what you're going to get, because everyone else at this point is one big question mark. And by the sound of it, from a couple days ago as well, something I didn't mention, it doesn't sound like Dave is too optimistic that Walker Buehler returns this year. Walker Buehler's, expecting himself to return. I think he said September 1st is his goal, and Dave Roberts came and said, "Oh, he said that? We've heard different things, but good for him for thinking that." So Walker Buehler, a guy that we are potentially relying on to be back in October, he might not be there as well for the starting rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like what you said. Maybe this isn't a complete "the sky is falling" episode, but it's a "the sky could be falling" episode. So, yeah, I mean, I certainly hope that these guys aren't as long or out as long as they could be. Especially for somebody like Dustin May, who's been through so much. For me personally, I've kind of just ruled out Walker Buehler in my head. I don't want to worry about that. I think deal with who you've got with you right now, because that was something that we talked about too. I mean, we had people sending their hot takes, and someone closes out Game 7 of the World Series for the Dodgers, Walker Buehler. Like, I'm gonna rule these out for now, just because he's not here. He's still trying to get back to where he once was, and the Dodgers have pieces right here, but these pieces need to stay healthy. And right now they're in a little bit tougher of a situation. But look, like, who knows what could happen if any of these guys are out a little bit longer. Let's say we get to the All-Star break and Pepio comes back, and who knows about Dustin May, but let's say Pepio comes back at the All-Star break, and maybe by then, Gavin Stone's look good. Maybe by then they think Bobby Miller's ready to give it a go. I don't know. I mean, we have to pump the brakes a little bit, but that's where the situation is currently with the starting rotation. Depth-wise is looking very, very thin, and the bullpen over the last couple of games, the outlook is a little bit more bleak than it was a couple of days ago. So that's just kind of how it is, but they can't afford any more injuries, even though it's only May.
The Dodgers started rotation entering the postseason: Clayton Kershaw, Julio Urias, Ryan Pepio, Gavin Stone, and Bobby Miller.
Yes.
We ride. With Walker Buehler coming out of the pen to close the 9th. Give us that world. Give us that world.
I like it.
The Dodgers, they have 6 consecutive games remaining before they have their next off day, but obviously 3 more against the Cardinals, who are heating up. Then you go to Atlanta for 3 games. Then you go to Tampa Bay for 3 games. So this upcoming week and a half is still going to be a gauntlet. It's going to be tough for the Dodgers. Just Tony Gonsolin. I believe Tony Gonsolin is starting today. Give them 5. Just go 5 innings. We'll take that. Give some length. Let the bullpen rest. If not, well, Josh, maybe we'll do "The Sky is Officially Falling" in a couple episodes, because like you just said, the sky's not falling yet, but we have the binoculars out, and we can see it. We see it in the distance.
We're looking up at the clouds. Yeah.
Yeah. Fully.
Maybe don't use your binoculars and look at the sun, though. That sounds bad.
Yeah, that sounds bad. But all right, Josh, let us wrap it up for this week's episode of Inside the Ravine. Again, you guys can listen to the show wherever you guys get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Odyssey app, and you can also watch the show on YouTube. Make sure to follow us on social media at Inside the Ravine. Sorry, I was blown away by Josh's stretch there. That was a very intense stretch. I mean, that was like...
Oh, my back cracked. Did you hear it?
Yeah. I lost track of what I was even talking about there. I think I'm talking about the socials. Inside the Ravine on Twitter, Instagram. I mean, that looked like a really comfortable stretch. So, like, you probably feel a lot better than you did 20 seconds ago. It was a good stretch.
I feel great. I'm ready to go for a run.
There you go. That was a great stretch. So again, make sure you guys follow us over there. Hit up that voicemail hotline. Let us know your thoughts on the Dodgers and everything. For Josh Schaefer, this has been Blake Harris. Thank you guys so much for listening. We really do appreciate it. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day wherever you may be.